Hi, Guy Powell here, and welcome to the next episode of the Backstory on Marketing and AI. And if you haven't already done so, please visit ProRelevant.com and sign up for all of these episodes and podcasts. I am the author of the book, The Post-COVID Marketing Machine, Prepare Your Team to Win. And you can find out more information on this at marketingmachine.prorelevant.com. Last year, generative AI exploded onto the marketing scene, and it's really changed the whole landscape for marketing. The big question, of course, on the minds of CMOs and entrepreneurs and even the C-suite is how can AI impact their business? Well, let's see if we can help them out today. Businesses are learning more and more about how to take advantage of AI and build really creative solutions that can differentiate their brands and be protected. With nothing more important than technology protection, whether you're a small or a large business, getting AI to work for them can be a big differentiator. So today, with that in mind, we're interviewing Robert Plotkin, and he is an AI patent attorney. What could be better than that for what we're talking about? So let me tell a little bit about Robert. For the last 25 years, he is a renowned AI patent attorney, and he's secured many patents for his clients' software and AI inventions, and then deployed them in historic license and litigation wins against AI upstarts and giants alike. It's clear why cutting-edge AI companies worldwide engage Robert to create patent portfolios that protect and to profit. He first shared his patent strategies, his AI patent strategies, in 2009's groundbreaking The Genie in the Machine. Now, 15 years later, amidst the global AI frenzy, his second pioneering AI armor, Securing the Future of Your AI publication, a company with strategic intelligence. So with that, I don't know if I did well with the with your bio there, but you've got some. You're definitely on the leading edge of what's happening today in a huge way. Welcome, Robert. So good to have you.
Thanks so much for having me, Guy. Yeah, it's been exciting to be immersed in the world of AI for a long time and to see it come to fruition in such a widespread public way in the last year and a half or so after being immersed in the weeds of it for so long. And it's great to see a broader public be able to take advantage of AI in so many different fields, including marketing and including my own profession of the law.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about your backstory on AI. How did you know in 2009 that AI was going to be the two words of the future?
I actually started writing about the impact of AI on the patent system around 2002, I think was my first academic paper. And the reason I latched onto that was I was seeing how AI was being used to automate the inventive process. People were using AI back then, much less powerful than the AI of today, but people were using AI to help them invent new products, to design drugs, to design airplane wings and antennas, and even to write software. In some cases, to create entire product designs automatically, but in most cases, just to streamline the process. But in many of the ways we're seeing now, to speed up the process of experimentation. And this was fascinating to me because as a patent lawyer, traditionally, it's humans who are manually coming up with ideas, manually building them, testing them. And so to see AI automating the process of invention, it made me think, well, what is the impact of this for patent law, which you could think of as the law of invention? Can AI be considered an inventor? Will AI make human inventors obsolete? Do the rules of patent law need to be changed in light of how AI is automating the inventive process? So that's what motivated me. I wrote a bunch of academic papers, and then I worked on the book, The Genie in the Machine, which was published in 2009 and which addressed all of those questions. And then, of course, at that time, it was mostly of interest to high-tech companies, to other patent lawyers, but ever since the launch of ChatGPT and the current boom we're seeing in generative AI, all of those questions I raised back 15 years ago have become much more prominent. The US Patent Office and patent offices around the world have been issuing new rules, asking for public comment about all of these questions. There have been court cases asking, can an AI system be named as an inventor on a patent, as an author on a copyright, all of this. So it's really exciting to have been working on this for so long, and now to be involved in the debate and discussion in a much more public way.
Yeah, interesting. And certainly I never would have thought that AI would have been a key piece of invention, but I could certainly see where it could potentially do that, certainly influence the direction that, the human mind can take, and maybe even accelerating, things that go in certain directions. Where else do you see the impact of AI in the organization and for the rest of us generally?
Yeah, I mean, generative AI certainly is impacting every industry and field in which people create content. So yours of marketing, mine of the law are two key ones. Most of what I do, you could say, is digesting information from a client about what they've invented, and then creating documents, like writing a patent application, which describes the invention, describes its benefits, and explains why it should be entitled to patent protection. My work involves creating content. So to the extent that generative AI can assist with that, it's already impacting how I and other lawyers practice law. It can also analyze information, summarize information, rephrase or rewrite information. So again, for any field of knowledge workers, lawyers, marketers, writers of any kind, graphic artists, the ability to take a large amount of information, synthesize it, and then summarize it or revise it. I find it really useful sometimes for taking complex concepts and explaining them in simple terms, whether to help me understand those concepts more easily or to enable me to explain them to someone else more easily. So it's really having, and I don't use the word revolutionary lightly, a revolutionary impact on any field that involves synthesizing, analyzing, understanding, or generating descriptions of information in words or in imagery.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think and I think the word revolutionary is like that. When I was younger, certainly computers generally I think they were, just the revolutionary projection of capability that was going on was just incredible. And now the next thing, which is this generative AI. I always had a question though, and maybe the answer isn't out there yet. But when I use, let's say, Google search, and then I use, let's say, ChatGPT, and I put in my verbiage into Google search, and then I put the same words, let's say, into ChatGPT, who owns the words that I typed in? Number one, and then who owns the words that come back out?
Yeah, this is particularly the words that come back out is somewhat of a open legal question right now. There are some big battles going on now in relation to copyright of information that's involved in generative AI systems. So that can include both the information that's used to train a model like ChatGPT. So, your listeners may know that the language models like GPT-3 and GPT-4 were created by digesting a huge amount of content on the web, tons of websites, the information at the US Patent Office, Reddit and Wikipedia were big sources, and Quora and all of this, taking that information in and then extracting understanding of it, essentially what the words mean, how the words are related to each other, so that when you then ask a question about a topic, the ChatGPT application that you're using goes through that and pulls out relevant information. So the first legal issue is who do the copyright owners of the information that was used to train GPT have any rights in the model? Do they have any ability to stop training from being done on their copyrighted works? And there is a major lawsuit right now going on between the New York Times and OpenAI over exactly this issue. So that is an open question. Now, you asked on the other side, once the model has been trained and created, who owns what goes into it? I think that depends in part on the license agreement, the agreement that you have with the company like OpenAI. I tell people you should not generally be putting in anything to OpenAI, like to ChatGPT, that you don't want to be made available elsewhere, because at least in the free version, they reserve the right to take anything you type into ChatGPT and use it to train future versions of their model.
So, yeah, interesting. Because from a marketing perspective, I find that, really important because, and even in a legal, but in a marketing perspective, who owns that output, but also then who owns the input. So if I type something in, then, and I don't know what the license agreement is, then, because anything that I write, I own the copyright to. But I guess then in the agreement, anything that I write in ChatGPT, I must be licensing my text to them.
Right. Yeah. So this is why, in a lot of ways, the question of who owns the copyright is, I wouldn't say it's irrelevant, but it's not as important as what you just said. Whether you own the copyright in what you type in or not, you're granting OpenAI permission to make use of what you type in, at least in the free version. So that's why I say the free version, if you pay, you have the option to turn off the ability of ChatGPT to train based on what you type in. So if you want further protection, use the paid version, turn off the training. And if you even want more protection, I mean, I'll tell you that we as a law firm, when we do work for clients, if we want to make use of generative AI, we don't use ChatGPT. We're currently using one of several products that are out there on the market that are being sold specifically for law firms that have a much higher degree of guarantee that anything we provide won't be used, won't be exposed to anyone else, won't be used for training, won't even be stored on a server after we enter it, won't be even processed outside of the US. So for anyone working in an industry like law or medicine, maybe certain types of marketers who need that higher degree of protection, you might need to use other tools other than ChatGPT that provide you with a higher degree of assurance that nothing you provide to them will be used for training or copied.
Well, what's interesting too is because I likened it to Google search as well, or search generally, because if I type in, a search term, Guy Powell or Robert Plotkin or whatever, Google takes that information and then passes it back to the analysts, the marketing analysts, and says, well, there's been 15,000 searches for Guy Powell, I wish. And they give you that statistic back. So they kind of, do they own that? Does Google own that in a similar way as the free version of ChatGPT, or is there kind of a difference in who owns all that?
Well, usually a search is too short to even necessarily be subject to copyright protection. So again, who owns it may not be the most important thing, but certainly Google has the authority under your end user license agreement to make use of that search in their statistics, as you said.
Yeah.
Right. So even there, I know I have clients who, when they're working on developing a potentially patentable invention, early on, they don't even type in searches to Google that
Mhm.
they think might reveal what is patentable about their invention. Because, you know, a smart person or piece of software, even if what you're putting into the search doesn't necessarily describe the invention, it might give away some clues by the
Yeah.
questions you're asking, right? Might give some hint as to what invention you've come up with that answers those questions. And so anyone who's working on, again, something that's really highly confidential or highly innovative should be thinking about what to type into any cloud-based available tool, whether it be Google or ChatGPT, if there's no contractual guarantee that that information won't be
Mm.
used by the company that's providing the tool or to some third party.
Well, and now that's where that gets, I think, really important for marketers. And one of the things that marketers do is we launch new products, new software, new hardware, whatever it happens to be. And we certainly don't want, as we're doing our planning and generating our launch materials and our strategic plans, we don't want anything to leak about the launch until we actually want it to be launched and made public. And so I could see then where marketers, absolutely need to work in a confidential space if they're going to use a tool like ChatGPT to support that launch, to support even their marketing budget for the year. That or whatever the marketing plans are, they have to work in a confidential space in order to make sure that whatever they're doing doesn't become public, before they want it to become public.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you or people listen to you are familiar with projects that are so confidential that you use a fake title for the
Hmm.
project while it's while it's ongoing. I have that with clients where they're concerned that
Yeah.
just the name of the technology that they're developing, if someone else heard the name, would say, "Oh, wait, I think I know what they're up to." Uh, and so we use phony project names while things are under development, just for that purpose. So, but again, I'll just say, even OpenAI has an enterprise version of ChatGPT available, which provides a higher level of confidentiality. And there are other companies out there that are targeted more at providing confidential use of generative AI. So if anyone's concerned about that aspect of it, just do your research, read the license agreement very carefully, and find a tool that would provide the confidentiality assurances that you need.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and none of us, of course, read those license agreements. They're way too long, and I think they're long for a purpose, so that you fall asleep before you get past the second page. So maybe, maybe you could have ChatGPT summarize the license agreement so you could figure out what, you're actually signing to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, so let's talk a little bit about ChatGPT and marketing, and maybe the patent process, and or how all of this is now coming together to really help marketers do better, but also in a way that they want to do better.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few general principles, I think, that are applicable to anyone who is creating strategies, creating documents, creating any kind of content. One is, it's usually most helpful to see a generative AI tool like ChatGPT as a assistant or a collaborator, rather than as something that is going to replace you or do all of the work for you. I think that when ChatGPT first came out, and even now, I see a lot of people trying to use it to write an entire document for them, whether that be an email or a landing page or something longer than that. And there's a lot of work being put into how can we create some super long prompt such that it will create, the ChatGPT will create that whole end product for me. And then people end up either putting in a lot of work and being disappointed, or just generally seeing the output that comes out of that email or landing page or strategy document and thinking, this isn't really I can't use this as is, and then being frustrated and giving up. But to me, that is setting up yourself for failure. Because, yeah, if you look to ChatGPT to just do an entire task for you, you're probably going to be disappointed. But that's why I say, if you look at it as an assistant, if you hired a human assistant, would you necessarily look to them to do an
Hmm.
entire project for you with one instruction? No. If you did, you would probably be disappointed with their output. Instead, you would say, do some research for me on a topic and give me some bullet points. Or you would say, come up with some high level ideas for a topic or for some section headings or for an outline. You would give that person a smaller set of tasks. You would review their work. You would give them feedback. You might do some of the tasks yourself entirely. There would be a set of smaller tasks you would delegate or assign, or if you were working with someone who's more of a peer than an assistant, you might divide up tasks between you, share your output, have a dialogue, go back and forth in an iterative way. And so that is what tends to be more of a productive, realistic way to work with a tool like ChatGPT as well. Use it for small tasks, for brainstorming, for coming up with ideas, even for strategies, for documents to write, for examples of concepts you want to convey, for expressing something you've already written in a simpler or more compelling way or in a different tone or something like that, and expect to do a lot of iterating back and forth, adding a lot of yourself to it. And if you do that, it's going to be, in a sense, more work than just coming up with one prompt where you get an answer back. But it's also going to result in much higher quality end result and you'll be much more satisfied, and you can still save a lot of time. And I find often not just save time, but end up with a better work product than you would have been able to if you didn't use the tool, as long as you're using it wisely. And so we can talk more about this, but what I found is I've been building up what I'd call my Swiss Army knife, or my bag of tricks, that I use with ChatGPT, each of which performs a fairly small task, but when I use them repeatedly, can help me do a much better job than I would have done if I did it all manually.
Yeah, interesting. Now, you mentioned one thing which I thought was kind of fascinating, was that you can have Chat GPT or the AI come up with a few, let's say, creative ideas for a new marketing campaign.
Yeah.
And so can it really work outside the box, so to speak, as opposed to having a handful of humans, individual marketers being there in some kind of a brainstorming session and, putting up stickers on the wall and whatever,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to saying to ChatGPT, give me 10 ideas on how to be incredibly different as we're launching this new bag of potato chips.
Yeah, you raise a very good point in that, because ChatGPT is trained on publicly available data, what it comes up with is going to tend to reflect ideas that are already out there. There is, in a sense, a limit on how creative or out of the box it's going to be. But there's a few ways to address that if you do want it to be more out of the box. There is actually a setting called the temperature in ChatGPT. I'm not even sure if it is accessible in the ChatGPT product. I know that as a programmer, you can change that setting, where you could think of the temperature essentially as the amount of randomness that
Mm.
it inserts into the process of coming up with an answer for you. So if you wanted to use ChatGPT like a search engine, like Google, and just give you existing information back, you would set the temperature to be very low because you want it to give you accurate answers. But if you want it to be more creative, you would set the temperature
Mm.
higher. And in fact, if you have ever used Microsoft Bing or Copilot, it has, I think, 3 settings like this that are essentially for the temperature, which is like more accurate, balanced, or more creative. So that's one thing you can do it essentially internally from a technical point of view inserts some randomness and favors things that are less common in its answer. The second thing you can do is in the prompt you provide it, you can provide a longer prompt, one that really sets out what your goals are. Let's say for a marketing campaign, tell it, really what you're looking for, and that tells it to come up with a variety of different types of ideas. You might even give it some examples of different types of things. I was actually in this book that you mentioned earlier of mine coming out soon called AI Armor. I did a lot of brainstorming for the title and the subtitle. And to help, and I used ChatGPT in part of that brainstorming. Some of what I did was I said, help me come up with concepts. And then I asked it a few times, here's a concept I want of defense. That ended up being the armor eventually after a lot of back and forth. I said, come up with a bunch of terms that refer to defense from Greek mythology. I gave it categories to look to. So I had to put some thought up front into those categories. But once I did that, it came up with a bunch of examples that to me seemed creative. They probably weren't, but they were creative from my perspective in the sense that they were things I wouldn't have come up with within that category. And then they prodded my own mind to think, oh, those 2 out of the 10 it came up with are interesting. Let me feed those back and say, come up with some more like this. So this is what I mean by the back and forth. It may lead you a little bit into the creative territory. Then you add your own creativity and ask it to come up with more in a slightly different direction with a different category or something like that. So this is why I talk about this as a human AI collaboration.
Yeah, and it's really it is so amazing how that creative process is enhanced or can be enhanced by by just putting some of those prompts in there. I had forgotten about the temperature setting, and I like the way you put it is like more. I think you said more random versus less random, or more real versus more creative. That's an interesting way to put that. And so I'll have to remember to find out about that, whether that's available in the free version or maybe available in only the paid version or something like that. So one of the things that I think that I kind of see as a marketer. So marketing has kind of 2 sides to it. You have the brand side, and then the marketing teams on the brand side. Excuse me. And then you have the agencies. And one of the things that I've found is that as I've used AI is that I mean I can easily as a marketer be a handful of times more effective. So the challenge I think for agencies is, are they going to have to lower their rates because they're going to be able to get the same amount of work done in less time, or they're and if that's the case, then they have to lower their rates because some competitor will say, hey, listen, I can do what they're doing for half the price. And, why are you paying them, the big bucks when I'm going to, supplement things with AI? Or they're going to now have to change the way that they're pitching by saying that you're going to get X amount more for the same amount of money. How do you see that? Is that affecting both the marketing side as well as the legal side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one is, I think, and there's a lot of discussion of this in the legal world, that this is yet another development that's making hourly billing for a lot of services make less and less sense. Uh, this is something that's been discussed in the legal world for decades now. And my firm, we offer hourly billing and fixed fees, and we do a lot of work on fixed fees. And I think, the use of generative AI makes fixed fees make a lot of sense, where we're saying to the client, look, here's the fee we're going to charge because you're going to get that amount of value out of the project, regardless of how it was done. Now, it may be that over time, there's downward pressure on those fixed fees as more and more people start using the generative AI. But I think the proposition to the, in our case, we call the client or the customer, makes a lot of sense, that as long as they're getting that value out, then the fixed fee makes sense. So, but as you said, we're already seeing, though, the ability to offer either additional services or different options for existing services through the use of generative AI. And I suspect the same would be true in marketing and in other fields. So I would suggest that people look for those opportunities to provide a wider range of offerings, whether it be entirely new services or additional options within an existing service to provide more value as a result of generative AI. And it's not only because of the reason you said, although it is partially that the generative AI may drive the prices down, it's that generative AI actually enables you to do things that you couldn't do before, or that you couldn't do before in a way where there would be a product market fit. We're finding that there's things that we maybe would have wanted to offer to a client before, but there was no economically feasible way to do it. And generative AI is now making that possible. So it is a win-win. It means we can provide the client with something that they wanted, but that we couldn't provide in an economically viable way. Now we can do it. We can offer it to them. They're getting something they want at a very reasonable price, and we're making use of generative AI to help us provide that.
Yeah, and because I think there's probably 2 or 3 maybe classifications of deliverables that the agency might have, or marketing in general. When I think about an example like generate 52 topics for a weekly blog post series, and then generate the content for that. There's things that are very repetitive that will definitely be enhanced. The quality will go up, and then I think the cost would actually go down. And so then on those kinds of things, I think the agencies or the marketing team are going to end up, definitely seeing downward price pressure on them, or cost pressure on that. I think, though, from a value perspective, kind of what you were talking about, being able to now be significantly more valuable in some of the maybe one-time things, I think that's also the case, because now I can, first of all, as a lawyer and even as a marketer, I can have ChatGPT educate me a lot faster than I might otherwise be educated, and therefore I can be, a lot smarter in how I pitch the product, how I develop the concept, how I, everything as it relates to that. And therefore, I'm going to be, able to win a lot more deals, so to speak, or be a lot better at my marketing strategies because I've used, ChatGPT to help me along the way.
I mean, I'll agree. And I'll give from my field an example of that, which is, as much as I am an expert in software patents, I have a background in software and computer science. When I'm working with a client on a new invention in robotics or quantum computing or something else, I am a generalist, and the client and the inventor knows so much more than me. They're an expert, and they come to me with an invention. We may have a meeting. They may give me some documents describing it. Then I go back and I digest it. And, traditionally, I've had to then go back and ask them a bunch of follow-up questions. Now, and I can use generative AI to do that background education of me, to not eliminate, but reduce the amount of time they have to spend working with me to educate me about their field, about some of the details of the invention. And for my clients, they want to get the work product out of me with as little effort on their part as possible, because they want to spend their time running their business, developing new technologies, bringing products to market, not working with a patent attorney to help hold the patent attorney's hand in writing a patent application. So just as Google and Wikipedia and the previous generations of computer technology helped us do some of that self-help, you would say, on our side as the service provider, I found that generative AI is taking it to a whole other level. Of course, for all the reasons we talked about, I then do have to confirm what I've learned with the client, but I found that if I use the technology wisely, it really enables me to, as you said, educate myself much better and take up a lot less of the client's time, and then come back to them much better prepared than I would have been in the past. And we can just hit the ground running so much more easily.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think you're right. And my mind is spinning as you're talking about even for what I do which is business development to sell marketing services, to be able to use ChatGPT or generative AI to really improve the way we go to market. Um, unfortunately, I could talk to you. We didn't even talk about anything related to patents, and I could talk about patents. I just think it's a fascinating topic, and but nevertheless, that might not be appropriate for my marketing audience. But I do want to ask you a question. So, from your exposure to marketing and certainly to AI, what kind of advice would you give an up and coming marketer, maybe a new graduate, or maybe somebody who's been out there for a year? What kind of advice would you give them for them in their careers, for as they look at marketing and then AI, of course, surrounding that?
Yeah, I think in all fields, we're in a fascinating inflection point, right? Where the use of generative AI makes it very tempting to uh, cede responsibility to it and to use it for your work, whether it be writing a legal brief or a patent application or creating a marketing strategy or a blog post or something else. And for young people who are first coming up, maybe with fewer years behind them before this technology existed, it might be even more tempting to let the technology do a lot of the heavy lifting for them. For people like you and me, we had so many years where the technology wasn't available to us. We had no choice but to build up a lot of skills that we had to use to get the job done without that technology, right? So I would say to young people, resist the temptation to let it do too much for you. Recognize the value of the skill of the manual skills. I'd say in the context of art, it would be of using a paintbrush to paint, but learn how to combine those old traditional skills in whatever field you're in with the new skills. Those are the people who are going to be the most valuable. The people who know, again, when writing a patent application, when it is necessary or most valuable to write the words manually, to rely on your own knowledge, to revise what the generative AI came up with, when to use it, though, to generate content that you then, of course, still review yourself. That the developing that set of skills of when to do things manually, when to draw on other people who have skills that you don't have, when to collaborate as a team, and how to work together as a team effectively. Think of the technology as another team member, which has its own strengths and weaknesses. So just when you're putting together any kind of a team, you ask, what skills do we need? Where can we find those skills? Who has them? How can we piece together then a team that has collectively all the skills we need for this project or task? Well, the generative AI is just another team member in a sense, but then it requires each person to know when to do things themselves, when to draw on the AI, when to revise or review. For young people, if you can develop all of those skills, and I'd say younger people, often have a greater facility to develop those technology-based skills more quickly or easily, or they're a little more open-minded. that might be your competitive advantage, but know when to mix and match
Mm.
old and new.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like your point there in terms of how to use Chat GPT or AI, but not use it to do everything. You have to really know what the bounds are. Which kind of brings up and maybe really a last question, and is so what is the next big thing in AI?
The thing that's getting a lot of discussion now, and I think it is for good reasons, is what some people are calling agent-based systems. Or think of it this way: with ChatGPT and everything else like it that's out there, whether it be an artwork like Midjourney or DALL-E, uh, generally the way they work is there is a piece of software and a human puts in a prompt and gets a single output out, and then the process is done. uh, the next generation of tools, and there's some of them out there now, and there's a lot of work going into them, are tools that can take your input saying, I want a marketing strategy, I want a piece of software that does the following, I want a website that does the following, I want a patent application that describes this invention, that can take that input, use generative AI to generate some output, let's say a partial draft, and generate 10 different parts of the document, and then evaluate them itself
Mm.
and revise them and add to them, and then go out to Google and do some research and pull information back. These are more complex, interactive AI-based systems that do more than just take one prompt and generate one output. That is the next big thing. It makes a lot of sense, and we're only at the beginning of it now. It certainly promises to address a bunch of the drawbacks and limitations of these very, as powerful as something like ChatGPT is, I'm going to say the limitations of these fairly simple one-step AI systems that have gotten so much attention in the last year or so. And
Right.
I think we're going to find our minds blown by what some of the agent-based systems can do. But what is the drawback, or the thing we need to stay attuned to in those systems, is that the challenge of developing them is that if you say, I want a marketing strategy, what's going to stop that system from iterating and going really far afield and come back with something that just ran so far with your idea that it comes back with something that's not at all what you were looking for? And so people are looking into, how can we put humans in the loop, so to speak, to guide or course correct these agent-based systems to keep them on task while still getting the benefit of their ability to iterate rapidly and internally without having to get human input at every single step of the way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. I hadn't even thought about that, and that's going to make then the human even more effective, because there, a lot more of the steps that would have taken place are now going to be, further enhanced through AI. We're going to have to break here. As much as I'd love to talk further, Robert, thank you so much. It's been really good. Tell me, for the audience, where can they find out more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I post all the time on LinkedIn. So if you remember anything about where to find me, go to LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/Robert Plotkin. You can follow me there. I post about AI generally, about AI and intellectual property law, specifically patents. So if you're at a tech startup company or any company that's developing innovative AI, check me out there. Or you can go straight to my law firm's website, blueshiftip.com. We both have tons of free content, podcasts, blogs, recorded webinars, and you can also contact me and even schedule a meeting with me through there.
Fantastic. So linkedin.com/in/Robert Plotkin. And then otherwise the company is blueshiftip.com.
Blueshiftip.com. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you. Robert, thank you so much. And to the audience, please stay tuned for many other videos in this series of the backstory on marketing and AI. And if you'd like to, please visit marketingmachine.prorelevant.com and download some of the excerpts that I have on my latest book. And certainly don't forget to sign up for more episodes. And if you liked this podcast, please rate it with 5 stars. Robert, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me, Guy. I really enjoyed it.